Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this month's webinar. It's entitled, What I Learned from 300 Audience Sales Calls. We're really excited to have Rhonda with us today as a guest, and we'll certainly go through the introductions and pleasantries here in a minute. But I first want to remind you that during today's session, the forum for today's presentation with Rhonda is going to be very discussion-oriented around some topics that people have expressed interest in, of hearing more about some of Rhonda's experiences and successes around how data and information is changing the way media organizations and salespeople are representing themselves. So we're really going to pick her brain and find out a lot of specifics on experiences and advice for every one of you today. So please, if you have questions along the way, submit them through the question box. It's a good way for us, appropriately at times, to try and interject questions from you. Afterwards, the presentation will be available on recording, as well as the slides potentially available as well for you. I'm Brett Kierstead. I'm SVP of Operations for Knowledge Marketing and the host of our monthly webinar series on topics important to publishers and media companies. Just for those of you who are new to the Knowledge Marketing family of presentations and content, again, we focus on helping publishers really in 5 key areas. Number 1 is unifying their audience database. Number 2 is re-energizing how they handle email. 3, modernizing circulation. 4 is helping them capture this growing area of behavioral engagement. And last is really working with our customers to help empower their media sales success. And for that, of course, that's part of the reason why we're so lucky to have with us today your wonderful speaker, which is Ronda Hughes. So Rhonda has an excellent experience and background. She's been a customer of ours for several years and a real visionary in the areas of media selling and audience database development. And we're excited to have her here, and I'll allow Rhonda the opportunity to introduce herself and get us started.
Well, thank you, Brett. I don't know about being a wonderful speaker, but I'm certainly passionate in what we've done in the last 3 years, and I would like to thank Knowledge Marketing for giving me the opportunity to talk about it. So
excellent.
I've been with, actually in publishing for 27 years in B2B publishing with, started out, as many of you know, who are probably listening, with HBJ, then it was Edgel, then AdvanceStar, and now it's UBM Life Sciences. So we went through a lot of changes, and this most current change or trend in the business is, being data-oriented everything. I'm very happy to be involved with that, and it's, just exciting times.
So you're a little bit more about some of your experience, so Rhonda, obviously you came through audience development, so you understand a lot of this stuff from that side of the equation. And then a little bit about, maybe talk a little bit about how you supported sales reps, kind of just how the role you're in got started, and how you kind of did that.
So audience development was a huge help. Obviously, when I started back in the day, it was circulation management, right? So we were up to our eyeballs in numbers and stats and statements, and that was very important because we had to work with the databases and fulfillment and really understanding our subscribers. So that background, later developing into audience development director, was a huge help, especially when developing this database, integrated database, because we know as circulation people, audience development people, that everything has to map correctly. So that really helped the process of getting on board with it, is understanding that. As far as supporting sales reps, that was why I was hired into this new position, and which is already over 3 years old. It goes fast. But they really wanted someone to champion the changing of the mindset of audience first, product second when going into sales calls, and coming from the data side and really taking ownership of an integrated database really helped me along with the sales reps to prepare that journey of saying, here's why we talk about audience first, here's who we have. It's very important because our sales reps are the experts in what types of vehicles we have, you know, your publications, e-newsletters, digital editions, webinars, white papers. I mean, I could go on and on, the whole wagon wheel of products that we have. They're the experts in that, but they really needed someone to come on board and explain the importance of what really powers those types of platforms.
Excellent.
Okay.
And then 300 sales calls later, now you're on the dark side, right? You joined us on the dark side.
Exactly, 300 sales calls later, and we'll talk about that later in the presentation. It sounds like a lot, and it is a lot. And we, you know, starting with Advanced Star, now UBM, we really pounded the pavement with 6 of our brands. A few of those brands are global and have their own, of course, branding, but in Europe, we talked to everybody, and when I say everybody, I truly mean we went out and tried to talk to everybody, and we'll talk about those different ways in a, you know, later in the presentation. But I am more on the sales side of things than anything else, and now I really, because I've been up to my eyeballs in it, I understand what a publisher and what sales reps go through when they're trying to really explain to their clients the importance of data and target marketing.
All right. So that's the background for Rhonda, and for those of you on the call, again, we have a mixed group, some sales, some are in the audience development side. Let's just talk a little bit about some sell in bigger customers, et cetera. So just as a framework, and maybe we'll talk a little bit about your sales environment, you know, and here's a couple of different questions just so people can get some understanding. You know, what industry do you sell into? You know, what sizes of advertisers have you met with? Maybe some of the levels of individuals that you present to, and the different types of presentations that you deliver. Can you just kind of talk through each of those just so people get a framework when you say, you know, selling and audience, who is it that you're talking to?
Absolutely. So I am with the Pharmaceutical Life Science Division of UBM. So we have, when I mentioned our 6 brands, it stretches from pharmaceutical technology, biopharm, applied clinical trials, pharmaceutical executive, and then the life sciences, LCGC, and spectroscopy. LCGC is more the chromatography side of the life science business. So very scientific. And those are the types of industries that I go out into the market and talk to. And yeah, it was very interesting trying to learn some of that very scientific and pharmaceutical background. So the 300 sales calls really did help with that, learning the industries. The size of the advertisers, it is a wide range. We talk to, or I've talked to advertisers, you know, the very small mom and pop shops that don't have their own marketing department. They don't use agencies. They really need us for all of what you would consider maybe the marketing services, whether it's design, copywriting, email, 101 basics. I mean, some of these people really need our help and lean on us for that, all the way up to the huge advertisers that, quite frankly, it's hard to get 2 minutes with. We talk directly to their ad agencies, which is a whole nother conversation of how they accept, you know, the media nowadays and data and how they handle it. And what levels of individuals. If it's the small companies, we're talking right to the owners, directly to the owners. And, you know, sometimes that's a really good thing, and sometimes that could also be difficult. But when it comes to the bigger companies, it's their either, like I said, their marketing departments, where you're talking and presenting to a whole panel of marketers, or of course their advertising agencies. What types of presentations do you deliver? Well, you name it. When we first started this and we wanted this database to get out into the market and really explain to people, we had, right out of the gate, a bunch of marketing pieces. We definitely changed them along the way as we learned what people were looking for and wanted. But we wanted the message to get out. So whether it was at a trade show, our big event trade shows, I was doing demonstrations in front of, it could be 2 people, it could be 20 people. But we signed up at trade shows, one-on-one conversations, group demonstrations. After that, we certainly did a lot of phone calls where I would conference in along with the sales rep, an advertiser or ad agency, give the spiel of why this is so important, why it's unique in the industry, why it's a must-have. The bigger advertisers, the ones with the deeper pockets, or advertisers that we know we could grab some more of their marketing revenue, it would be a one-on-one, face-to-face sales call. I traveled quite a bit in the first couple of years talking to these people, and really became a partner with the sales team and the publishers to get the word out.
Excellent. So one of the things that comes up a lot that we want to discuss with you next, and there's a question that came in about, but so, a lot of organizations, especially as you and I have talked about, don't really understand clearly sometimes what people mean by integrated audience, or what is your asset, or what are you actually talking to people about, and how have you positioned it. So let's spend a little bit of time talking about the way that you have, and then I'll share some stories too that hopefully are anecdotal for other organizations on what exactly data means, right? Because it sounds like a buzzword, and salespeople generally aren't data people, but I think you've been able to, distill it down into something that I think a lot of people will make sense. So maybe you could do this in 2 parts. We'll just talk first about the products and services that make up your portfolio. You talked a little bit about it before, what makes up your data asset. And then lastly, how specifically you consider that to be a unique asset. So why don't you walk through first of all, just kind of the assets of the way your business is structured, because I'm sure it probably resonates with a lot of other folks on the phone.
Absolutely. And you know what? We learned, we had more assets than what we even thought when we first dove into the commitment and the investment of having an integrated database. The first thing people think of, well, we have all of our, you see the brands on the left-hand side, we have all our brands, and we have every single one of these have a print publication, and we have e-newsletters. And those are the 2 things that people usually go right out of the gate with. Well, even with that, so you have all your print publications and your e-newsletters, typically, and not always, but typically, those are 2 separate databases right out of the gate. So you have your audited publication operational database, which you typically pull all of your demographic information that you track, and that's audited, and it's fantastic. It's your traditional demos, business function title, and maybe in the science world we have other things important like, techniques, hugely important, or different types of specialties in a scientific area. But that's great, but we have our email database on top of that. So maybe on an e-newsletter you're not asking all of those questions, but what you do have to require is an email address. That's a requirement. So you'll probably have more email addresses in that database than in your print database. So pulling all of that together, we thought, you know what, we have our white papers. Some people download white papers. They might not get our print edition, but they get our white papers. And what about webcasts? And you know what, we have CVI conferences. We have over 125 conferences a year that people pay a ton of money to go see, and they're top in their market. We need those people. We need those prospects in this database as well. And, oh, by the way, we have our IVT network and educational products. And we learned that we really did uncover a lot more data than just what people think of as demographic data, business function title.
Yeah, because I think you always said, like, it kind of snuck up on you, and I think it snuck up on a lot of companies and media because they've all been adding these new products here and there and these new channels, and it's been wonderful. And then one day you woke up and you realized, holy cow, look at all this information, and you needed a way to bring it together, not just technology-wise, but into a more, cohesive strategy. And so, like, on the next slide, why don't you talk a little bit about the second piece, just about how you position this as an asset, how, because it's not just data, it means more than that. And maybe you could talk about the positioning here.
Absolutely. That was huge. That was what really turned this around, because everyone says they have data, and all the heavy lifting, they might not go into a sales call and say, we've got all this data, but it's in 8 different databases, and I know who your customers are, but, give us a month and we'll pull it together. You're never going to say that, but that's how we did it. I mean, with all the merge purges and everything going on. So now we have this integrated database, and I knew it was powerful, but how are you going to talk to the market about it? If the minute you say data or database, they're going to glaze over. So we had to identify it and put a logo on it, and call it CAS, Custom Audience Segmentation Tool. And that's what it is. It's a tool, and it drives everything. So the wagon wheel you're looking at is everything I've already talked about, what we have, the different platforms. But we were the only one, and still in the pharmaceutical life science industry, that really pulled it together, put a brand on it, and we share this tool. We use this for all of our internal marketing. That's what keeps it really clean, by the way, which is a whole nother webcast probably. But it also is a way to share it with our advertisers. This is something they consider to be their tool to pull their very targeted and engaged audience.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned, we talked a little bit about positioning-wise, that your advertisers, kind of your statement at the bottom, the statement about describing that, a data, it's not just information about products, or people that read your magazines. I love the positioning, the way it is the most comprehensive and dynamic database of professionals in the pharmaceutical life sciences industry. Right. I always kind of joke, it's like, that's what LinkedIn says, and we as publishers don't really, I don't think of ourselves that way, but it's very analogous. You happen to be, you see the comings and goings and the interest and the consumption and a lot of that data just like they do, but we tend not to have as pretty of a wrapper around it, but I think CAS does that job really well. I think as a tagline for you guys.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, that people do forget that being comprehensive and dynamic is the big word. I mean, what that means is, and I know we're going to talk about that in a little bit, but right out of the gate, that's the contextual and behavioral data. And because we do use this internally, and it's gone are the days where, oh, we got great metrics, let me show you an amateur report. No, we know our metrics. We all have benchmarks and opens and clicks, but now we're taking that, or we are putting it right onto our subscriber. It's right on their record. It's another level of information that's very powerful that we can easily pull up within seconds.
There's like 3 or 4 questions, Rhonda, that have come in, and for those of you who asked them about like targeting and engagement and how you use some of that data. So for those of you guys who asked that question, we're actually going to get to that here in a little bit when we start talking about some of Rhonda's specific strategies. That's coming up in a couple of slides. So I haven't forgotten your questions. They're really good. We'll get to them here in a few minutes. One of the other things I wanted to mention just for you, a lot of times people say, well, it's all fine and dandy, Rhonda, but I'm not Advanced Star Communications, or I'm not UBM. I'm just a small or a medium-sized niche publisher, and maybe I have a smaller audience, and I'm not in something as fancy as pharmaceutical and life sciences. So I just wanted to share with the group, we have another customer in Chicago area. They're in the plumbing, pipe fitting, and a very blue-collar, classic business, and TMB Publishing is our client, and they kind of followed along the model for their industry and created a brand for their database called Plum, a platform leveraging unified marketing. And they position themselves as, a unified marketing engine, the #1 audience leader in the PHCP industry, a database that contains demographic behavioral for targeting. So you don't have to be, gigantic organization with unlimited resources in broad industries across multiple channels. The concept of establishing yourselves as a voice for a salesperson in a niche market where you have dominant amount of data is a great strategy regardless. So they always thank you, Rhonda, Cass was the original, but you can see others have taken on that role.
That's great.
So let's talk a little bit more about positioning. So, when you first got started, so again, now we're moving into the even more tactical. So you get started out there and you're having this message. You're talking about, oh, we have, we have data and we're a data organization, and now you're starting to have those first meetings and kind of like what happened. What came about? What were some of the reactions? And then, maybe again you can morph into how advertisers, whether they're brands or agencies, what your salespeople were feeling, because a lot of the folks on here, if they want to do this, they're going to be wondering, well, what are the pitfalls? What are some of those experiences? So maybe you can work off this slide and just talk a little bit about how your thoughts came about.
Absolutely. Well, first, I'm going to start with the reaction of the sales reps, because when this first all came about, they're right away, within the first 2 weeks, I was super excited, right? We have Cass, we have everything mapped. We didn't have a name for it quite yet. We were still working on that. But right away, I knew there was a piece of something we were missing, and it was really education. We needed to educate sales reps, editors, audience development people, and really explain to them, yes, it's important that we're audited. That really is the backbone of everything we do. We have great data, and we're going to talk about junk in, junk out later. But it was really hard right out of the gate having a sales rep, put away that publisher's statement. Put it away, and let's talk about that later in the conversation, because we don't want to just put out, here's our numbers frozen in time, or even here's a 1 month glance at what we have. We want to talk about our full universe and all the vehicles that we use to get there. So it's audience, reach, audience, universe, engagement, all of that good stuff, and then bring out your tools. So right out of the gate, it took a lot of education for a sales rep to really learn that. Then the advertisers, getting into the advertisers and talking to them, their biggest thing was, oh, great, well, that's good, but haven't you always had that? And of course we did. We have been, using our audience, right, for sales for many, many, many years, right from the very beginning. So you don't want to go in saying what you had before was not good, because it was great, but what we have now is better, because A, we're integrated and we can offer you more because of that. And I think we talk about that a little later. And not only that, but we can vet it better for you, so you're not spending as much money trying to get down to those ready to bite, ready to buy leads. We can do that up front. So the advertisers were one of the objections, or one of the things where, we're still about quantity, not quality. So, that was a battle that we're, and we continuously battle that, but I'll tell you, it's gotten a lot better in the last 3 years. So right out of the gate, we did not want to have to go in and say, I have a great database for you, because I'll tell you, that's what they're thinking. That picture on your screen, they're thinking of a programmer in a closet somewhere running queries to find their audience. And again, they'll glaze over the minute they hear database. What we wanted to do, and what we learned after, a little time out in the field with it, was we wanted to go in with Cast. We have a product that will help you discover your most engaged, relative, and targeted audience, because in the long run, that's going to save them time and money when they try to convert those leads.
Yeah, fantastic. So yeah, I think like you said, that's how Cast came about. It was a wrapper around something that was abstract like data into something that was a brand that people would understand. Mm-hmm. All right, so let's talk about data, because that's always, we're all, all of the salespeople in the world, that is the scary, the scary word sometimes is data. But, I think you have a good perspective on this, and we could talk a little bit about, how to keep it from being unwieldy. So, so as time went on and things got, more data, and now all of a sudden, yes, it used to just be data on a BPA statement, but like you said, now it's web visits and opens and clicks and all this other stuff. What problems did that present? you know, everything from integrity to how much information that you have. And you know, the slide that I have now is a good one for people to think about, and why the challenge is that in the beginning, if all you're doing is tracking demographics, so if it's Brett and his title, well, that's one piece of information, and he's subscribed to a magazine. The year later, even if I change my title, it's still one piece of data. But in today's day and age, all of this information grows very quickly, because all of a sudden on every record, you might have 100 opens and 100 clicks, and over the course of a year, and website visits and content topics and engagement, and quickly you can go from, you know, 5 million pieces of data to 35 million to hundreds of millions of pieces of data. Even though your actual record size may not change dramatically, the amount of information does exponentially. So, you know, maybe you could talk a little bit on this, about just some guidance on that quickly through this section, just as people think about, you know, data itself.
Absolutely. So the slide prior, you talked about integrity, and you know, maybe so much data you're overwhelmed, and now this slide. So I'm going to wrap it all together. First and foremost, integrity. Don't be afraid. Trust me, once you pull everybody together, we started with 3.6 million records, and through the cleanup and deduping across databases and within databases, we have a little over 1 million records. And you're going to find holes. You're going to find areas that are not going to make you very happy. But you didn't. Before it wasn't all pulled together, you couldn't identify those areas. You couldn't really identify the age, right, of your data. You might know in some of the databases, but not all of the databases. You don't know how many emails that you're really missing, and where you could get them from other databases. What you don't know, and it's not good. So don't be afraid of what you find out, because it really gives you an opportunity to append and to fix and to fill in the gaps, which having an integrated database is the only way to do that. Junk in, junk out. Again, age of data, source of data, right? When's the last time we had a webcast on this product? Or what are your topics? What are the e-newsletters doing? Are they changing up your topics? Freshness of data and engagement. We can now, for audience development, that's one department that can use that as a benchmark, easily pull for re-engagement campaigns. People that don't open an email in 90 days, you know, they're put on a timeout, and now we can offer them re-engagement campaigns easily. I mean, push of a button. Segmentation work up front. I always tell our clients this: let's just take a minute and go through CAST, and let's do a screen share, and let's honestly take 20 minutes and find your target audience, the right people, giving them your right message right now. Maybe a phrase a little overused, but I'll tell you, if you do the work up front and really pay attention to that part of it, you will see your metrics increase. You'll get better open rates, and you'll get better click-through rates, and that's just the truth of it. After a bazillion projects I've done in this over the last 3 years, the more time the sales rep and the client, myself, put into picking their list right out of the gate, the better results they get. The conversion conversation. I always use the fishbowl. You know, people say, Rhonda, would you charge, you know, for this? I'm like, everything is custom. It depends on what the client's looking for, and I think we'll talk about that a little later. But I always say, what does it cost to go to a trade show? So you spend $25,000 on a booth, on booth space, on travel for people. That's even on top of the 25 grand. All your banners and stuff like that to get to a trade show, and you're so excited because you get 500 business cards if you're lucky in a fishbowl. What did it cost you? A, did you really put those into a database? Did you call every single one of them? Or maybe you emailed them? How many times did you email them to get 50 even really good leads? So the time and the money it costs you to vet that fishbowl is way more expensive than coming to a publisher who has awesome information right out of the gate, and that can easily add filters to get it down to the target audience they need and help with the vetting.
Hey, Rhonda, let me ask you, there was 2 questions, just to be clear on the way you said it. So on that freshness of data and engagement, I think you said something like, do you consider someone, you know, from a data engagement or from a content engagement, like within 90 days? Is that how you set it? And if they don't, you kind of put them in a timeout and try and re-engage them? Is that what you would consider engaged?
For our e-newsletters, we watch that very carefully. And for most situations, yes. So our e-newsletters that are out there, we want our advertisers to get the biggest bang for their buck. We make sure they're going to an engaged audience. And that was the catalyst. That was even before our database came into place. We had just this new mandate saying, listen, if someone doesn't open something from us in 90 days, they're still probably a very good customer in other areas, right, other platforms, but we need to re-engage them on our e-newsletters. So all of our products are very engaged.
And then from one other question, from a CAS perspective, you know, you talk about the database. Are you allowing more users? You've expanded the user base, right? Different people are involved in the conversation or in the participation of it.
When you actual access into the database?
Yeah. Yep.
Yes. Actually, we have just recently expanded that because, you know, obviously it's getting to be very popular. So we have, but that's very controlled. You know, the sales reps only have access to the lockdown version of SalesView. But I do have several others now that are able to go in and help pull lists and get counts for our sales reps.
Okay, good. Well, let's talk a little bit about specifically on selling audience, like the data side of it. And an example, now we're kind of, you know, another way of thinking about how your audience message is different from a product message. So here's an example on the screen and little data and how you talk about your ability to target and out front about that. You want to talk us through what this example does?
Oh, sorry. See, I get so excited. I love this slide. Back in the day, before the database, we would have an advertiser saying, listen, I just want to go to everyone that has an active email address in New England and maybe Middle Atlantic contacts. There's an event out there, and that's just who we want to go to. Well, before the database, we typically go to our publication database, right, and before cast, and we pull up an amount of records, and that was great. It was probably a pretty large list, and we would just blast to everybody. So now we're able to say, hey, advertiser, that's great. We can do that, and we can put a geographic filter in. But listen, who are you really trying to reach? Do you want everyone in the pharmaceutical industry out on the East Coast, or are there specific titles that you really want to get into? And typically they're like, well, yeah, actually, we want this department or this specific title. In this case, they only wanted people in research. So I'm like, what are your keywords? Research, clinic, lab. Great. Let's add them in. 3 seconds later, you have that as filter number 2, the orange circle. Those are the people that have one of those keywords in their titles, right? And they overlap a little bit with filter number 1 on the East Coast. So that was probably about 6,000 names then. So you went from a list of 86,000 out of the gate. In the olden days, we just fatigue our list like crazy, go to that big list, got it down to 6,000. And then I have the opportunity to say, now that's fantastic. That's 6,000, much better than 86,000. But wouldn't you rather want to go to people that have opened an email from us in the last 3 months? Because I can assure you they're opening email. They're engaged right now for whatever reason. They are very active with their email right now. Sure, we can add that on. 3 seconds later, now you have a list of 2,550 people on the East Coast that are within the research keywords in their title, which is important, and are very active with their email. That list of 2,500 really is a premium list, and they wouldn't be able to find it anywhere else, especially in the 10 seconds it would take us to pull it.
And so from there, to your point, the whole strategy becomes, now that you've identified the 2,550 users, now you start talking your audience, you're selling the access to that audience. Now you're going to go backwards, I assume, and start talking about how you get to them, what that is. How would that go then secondarily?
Absolutely. I mean, it doesn't have to be. I mean, my part of it is typically a direct e-message and not just one. Start a nurturing campaign with those 2,500 people. But we can use, again, CAST powers everything. It powers our webcasts, our white papers, our dedicated dialogue, anything content marketing related, CAST drives it. So
all product, so all of the solutions that you as a salesperson would create, like you said, whether it's a white paper, a download, an e-direct, a live event, it doesn't matter. All of that is a derivative of getting first to the audience and then working backwards to whatever the solutions are associated with that.
Absolutely.
Good. So there's this slide next to it is one that I think was kind of funny that people have thought about is, another way in life that people think about, we've always sold as much as possible and 50,000 names is better than 2,000 names. And we always joke that in a lot of the world, people understand that a targeted premium audience costs more. And there's a reason why a fillet is more expensive than a buffet. You could gorge yourself on the left and probably feel sick, which is probably what a lot of this industry has been doing for a long time in terms of sending massive emails to as many people and blasting them. But I think what you guys are doing, visually as a concept is focusing specifically on those, in that case, 2,500 people that the audience they're interested in, and then working backwards to make sure that you've got the right message for them. So I think this is a good, simple visual for people to understand. So let's keep going on selling. So again, selling, is about a lot of different things. If you're selling audience, it's not just the calls and the programs, but it's how do you use your information to prepare better. So a little bit about how are you using data to generate new interest. Are you doing things differently in terms of how you call plan? Like who you call on and maybe who you target. We can talk a little bit about that. But do you want to talk about this fun question that you ask yourself, or we all ask ourselves as salespeople in today's day and age?
Absolutely. I think this is great. I field calls all the time. I mean, we're in the business of getting, obviously I don't field calls from knowledge marketing. I love when they call me, but other vendors and people trying to call in, unless I know they're going to give me information that's going to set themselves aside from everybody else, what makes me want to pick up that call? So I look at myself before going on a sales call or even before giving a webinar like this. It's like, why would people listen? What can we give them that is different and will set us apart from everybody else and get that reputation of, you know what, we're going to talk to UBM Life Science because, you know what, I know they're going to offer us something wildly different than everybody else.
And I think we've talked about, like, sometimes people think about data and audience data, and they think about big picture things, and as salespeople, we think about it as, I want to sell these programs, but they forget to realize even just some of the basic fundamental skills of being a salesperson, there's opportunity. And so maybe you can kind of talk through, and I can add some color too, a little bit about, pre-call research. You're getting ready to go out to an advertiser on a sales call. They're an executive within the pharmaceutical life sciences there, or a media buyer for some organization. And maybe talk a little bit about how you can walk in and be more interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a really kind of a fun way to knock their socks off right out of the gate. You can use this on two different levels. You can find out if your advertiser is an actual customer of yours by going into the database right away, search their name. Once you get that name, pull up their profile, and they will be blown away when they see, hey, listen, we know you get these 3 magazines, these 2 e-newsletters, and we know you've opened up 5 times in the last 3 weeks, you've read these articles, and went to this webcast. And by the way, that's really good that you did that because we saw on your website, regulation, drug regulation is really important to you guys right now, and we've had 5 articles about that, and this is why you're opening our newsletters. You can take it to that level, but more importantly, and what I think is really cool is you can find out through your advertiser, or maybe you just know, a lot of the sales reps have been in the business for a very long time, so they know what their advertiser's #1 customer, who would that be, right? So you go into your database, you go into CAST, we pull up the business and industry of pharmaceutical, drug development, biotech, biopharm. I'm not going to read the screen, but we pull that up. We add another filter saying, you know what, I went to that top customer's website and they're very interested. What's trending right now is clinical trials. All 3 phases, that's all they're talking about. So I can put in those topics, people with active email, and then actually take it a step further and say, okay, they are interested in clinical trials, but what exactly are they interested in? What types of topics? What are they Googling? What are they looking at? So we can say, okay, not only are they in these topics, but they went to our Applied Clinical Trials website and they went into articles related to regulatory and government, for example. Well, now I've got 5 key people that I can print off their profiles, I can see who they are, and I can then now know by their profile that we have hundreds or thousands more people like them, right, in the system. But printing out those 5 profiles and bringing them in to the client saying, not only do we have these type of people in the database, here's what they're doing.
Yeah, I think people tend to overlook that this isn't a solution about dropping 1 million names on somebody, because in reality, you know, they can find a lot of that information elsewhere, but it's these nuggets of engagement and psychographics or actual behavioral information that is what separates you from them buying a list somewhere else. The thing I always say to media salespeople is, you know, every one of them goes into LinkedIn and looks up someone's profile and tries to find a connection. So does their competitive salesperson. So does every Tom, Dick, and Harry salesperson. But what separates you guys and good salespeople in this area is you can go in and actually see within your own database an incredible amount of information about that advertiser that no one else can do, and yet it's still an underused asset.
Right.
You know, quickly on this slide, you know, just obviously not everybody will get it, you know, your own litmus test on terms of who you talk to and when you sell audience, who's in your list.
Yeah, now after 300 sales calls or more, actually I stopped counting at 300, I can usually tell in the first 5 minutes if they really, get it or even want to ever get it yet. When I hear things like, oh no, I only want a banner ad. I only want, forget print. Print's dying. I just want to advertise in your e-newsletter. Right out of the gate, I'm like, nope. This isn't going to work, because you want people to say, hey, what are your platforms? I want to reach and use all your platforms, because people, how they digest news is very personal, and they might switch it up from day to day. So what do you have? And how often do you use your list? How clean are your lists? I mean, these types of questions, I love it. What are your privacy policies? These are people who want to go to email experts. So 5 minutes into a conversation, I will know if I have to do a lot of educating, whether or not it's worth it, and if they get it, I soon find out that they not only get it, but they will demand it. From this point forward, that's the type of customer service, marketing service that they want from their publishing companies they partner with.
Excellent. Now, last couple minutes, we're going to jump in. We'll just give a quick on this because, you know, I think sometimes, as you and I have talked about, everybody thinks this is all new and fancy and, oh my God, I don't know how to do this, or I used to sell it this way, or what is this data first selling? And I think, you know, you and I always make the joke a little bit about, you know, to a degree, like you said, you've been doing this for a long time, you've had success, and you know, this is a new strategy, but it's not. And maybe you can talk a little bit about our fun little story that we always like to use that really gives hopefully people comfort that this is something that anybody can do, you know, with the right, you know, effort and work. So you want to talk about our fun slide?
I will. I love this slide, and I can't remember, I think it was Brett back 3 years ago that said, you know what, list rental, it's cold dead fish. It's great, it's out there, but you know what, wouldn't you rather have sushi? It's still cold dead fish, but it's how you segment it, package it, and it's giving the customer what they want, whether, you know, what kind of sushi roll do you need? We have it for you. It's not just cold dead fish, everybody getting the same thing. And really, is it list rental? I hate it, and I can't even spit out those words, but It's not radically new. It is list rental, but what's new is how you segment that list, how you treat it, and how you get it out into the market as data, not just list rental. So no one should be afraid of this. It's probably things you have been doing, but you've been doing that brand silo type marketing, and you're not integrated. So what you're doing is really fatiguing your list, and I guarantee you if that's what you're doing, you have watched your open and click-through rates drop through the floor, and then you have watched also very disappointed customers in any type of digital marketing you're doing for them. You're watching those results drop as well. So it still maybe be list rental, right? But it's just packaged a lot better. It's segmented, and it's a lot, I guess, easier to digest when it's integrated target digital messaging and nurturing campaigns.
Yes, so I think, guys, everybody, just so you know, and thank you so much, Rhonda, but we have a bunch of questions. Rhonda, I know you can stick on. We're going to take some of these questions, which I think are fantastic. For those of you who don't want to drop off, but just to be, we promised you 45 minutes, and thank you so much, Rhonda. There's some really good questions just around packaging and pricing and engagement and stuff like that we can stick around if that's okay with you and just talk through. But again, for those of you who do have to jump off based on the 45 minutes, thank you so much. You know, hopefully it's been useful. The presentation will be available, recorded version, as well as follow-up will come back to you as well. If you're interested on the response, just request examples. So thanks, everybody. For those of you, we'll see you next month, but we'll continue on here for a few more minutes to get to really some of these really, really fantastic questions. So one of the questions, Rhonda, is a little bit about the impact that it's had on maybe, not just say print, but even just some of legacy products that you have, either from the advertising inside or from the market's, you know, commitment to some legacy products. Has it impacted your print revenue in that way? You know, have you positively or negatively? Do you see the correlation? Has it been cannibalistic in this area? That's kind of a question there.
It has not been cannibalistic. Some people might say, well, didn't it hurt your list rental revenue? It's like, you know, we changed up the product, right? For our customers, it should have really never been list rental. So no. What this has helped, and I want to answer really quickly, is with the package deals. So an advertiser is going to come to a publisher that says, hey, listen, you put a print ad in your magazine, we can also take that and move it out digitally. Because digitally, a direct e-message, you know, you don't even have to co-brand with our UBM brand. We can push it out for you with your company name in the from line. It's your message. But if our brand helps you put it in the magazine, that way it's co-branded, it's going to a huge market, and you'll be, you know, the eyeballs will be seen in the magazine, looking at that ad in there as well. So having the different options and being able to push them out differently has really helped, I believe, all of our different products, and it has not hurt them at all.
And do you, a little bit about, you know, now that you're, you know, I think we've talked about this before, we didn't bring it up, but do you now start to, I don't know, I guess the word might be like, you know, save or, I don't know, sequester out or keep private for maybe some of your best customers? I mean, is there something now that you're a little bit mature in there, you're obviously not selling this message to everybody, but, you know, how are you kind of slicing your customers, if you will, to give them the best sushi, you know, that you can offer?
Well, I love that because we never say no, which is why I had to get other people involved in help, you know, pulling list counts and doing that type of work, what I call getting in the weeds, which I hope some of the people are still on the line that are helping me with this. Listen to this, is I never tell a customer no. If they say, Rhonda, can you pull it this way? I'm like, I'm sure there's a way we can use our ad hoc filter. I'm sure there's a way we can sort it, pull it and do it. Everything is so custom. So everything we do with our top-notch clients that come back and really feel their audience is sitting and housed in Cast, I look at it as that is their audience. They talk to them every month. What else can we do for them to slice it and dice it. And obviously with the help, and not to sound too promotional, but with the help of knowledge marketing, they've been very good. When I say, hey, can you do this for me, or can we add this bell and whistle? And I could give 100 examples of where we've gone from 3 years ago to now, the different filters or the way we use them and how knowledge marketing has customized it. And that has come from our customers, requests from our advertisers. So one of the slides said, listen, listen, listen. It's really important because that's how we are really molding CAST and developing it and enhancing it to fit their needs.
Well, great, Rhonda. There's like everybody keeps sending in questions, which is awesome. But I think just maybe what we'll do is we can reply to them individually, offline. There's some good questions about just training and education. But I mean, I think in general, thank you so much. I think as a conclusion, I don't know, you kind of want to summarize a little bit for the people left here. They thought you were awesome. They want to get out there, but it seems like a big project. Can you,
Yes, I can. First and foremost, whether you are determined to do it internally or partnering with someone, you need data integration. Do the work, do the mapping, get your data integrated. Call it something. Start with the brand because people glaze over. They don't want to hear about databases. As Brett said, they get, scared. Even you guys get scared when you hear data. So you want to put a brand to it. Establish your one-page positioning message. We had a ton of marketing built around what we have. Now, this is stuff we've always probably had, but now it's packaged. It makes sense. It's integrated. I can't say that enough. And you can tell them that you're actually saving them money by vetting these people out first before we go out the door with any type of promotion for them. Think of some good clients. We used case studies right out of the gate. Think of your best clients and do some beta testing with some promotions for them. Work out the wrinkles before you really launch it to the world, and try again. Do whatever it takes to get the word out. You need to have somebody who's very passionate about it and take it on as their single most important job to get the database up and running and get it out into the market and be your point person.
Yeah, and I think, thank you, and I think I would just add, like I said before, for those of you, who think that, oh, this is an Advanced Star UBM initiative, there's a lot of organizations out there that are really thinking of different ways to improve the way their salespeople compete and how to leverage that amount of information that they have that is really unique to them and their industry. And so, like Rhonda said, I think hopefully this has been useful for you guys. It's some tips and tricks, and certainly if you have more questions, we'll get back to them. Again, Rhonda, thank you so much, and I hope everyone has a wonderful day. And if you want, again, to ask us any additional questions, please follow up subsequent, and we'll see you all again next month. So thanks so much, Rhonda. We'll talk to you again.
Thank you, everyone.
Right.
Bye-bye.
Bye, hon. See ya.